Hello and welcome to South Asia Chat, a podcast brought to you by the Institute of South Asian Studies at the National University of Singapore. I am your host, Kunthavi, a research analyst at the Institute. Balochistan is the largest province of Pakistan and is rich in natural resources and has a long coastal belt. However, economic growth doesn't reflect this reality in its entirety. To further analyze economic development within Balochistan and the bigger role it plays in state-oriented projects, I'm delighted to be joined by Dr. Hafeez Jamali, social anthropologist and current civil servant. Welcome to South Asian Chat, Dr. Jamali.
Thank you.
Let's start off. Balochistan plays a significant part in Pakistan's economy. Recently, the government of Balochistan allocated 34.1 billion rupees, which is approximately 231 million SGD, in the outgoing financial year of 2022 for various projects. It will be interesting to discuss these projects and what the bigger picture is for Balochistan's economic development. Starting off with a broader question on federalism and economic development, Pakistan adopted federalism as its primary form of governance in 1948. Over the years, in the context of Balochistan, how does federalism impact and aid economic development in respective provinces?
Thank you very much. And once again, I wish to thank the South Asia Institute at NUS for inviting me for this productive discussion. As you yourself said, that Balochistan is the largest province of Pakistan, and it has an outside strategic significance in the overall politics and security of Pakistan. We have two important and long and porous borders. One with Afghanistan in the north, and another one in with Iran in the west. And on the south, much of Pakistan's coastline comprises Balochistan, which is our Makran coast, which approximately 700 kilometers of coastline of Pakistan belongs to Balochistan. Despite its sort of outsized geographical extent and strategic significance, Balochistan is sparsely populated and comprises merely 5% of Pakistan's total population of 200 plus people, which leads to sort of what you call an uneven situation within the Pakistani Federation. Because much of our federal structure, both the power sharing mechanisms as well as the resource distribution mechanisms are based on the criteria of population. Although other factors such as geography, the level of what, for the lack of a better word, underdevelopment or poverty or relative deprivation and revenue generation potential of a province, all of them play a role in the relative position of a federating unit in Pakistan. But population is the sort of main criteria, and in that sense, the bigger provinces, the more populous provinces such as Punjab and Sindh, they tend to sort of dominate the central level politics. It's kind of for colleagues from India and elsewhere in South Asia. It's kind of similar to the relationship between the Hindi belt and other parts of the Indian Federation, if I may. But one thing which has sort of been more has complicated things more in the case of Pakistan is that whereas India at its independence in 1947-48 was quickly able to adopt a stable constitutional arrangement, Pakistan unfortunately could not. So there was a constituent assembly, which was formulated in, at independence in 1948. But various factions within Pakistani Constituent Assembly could not agree to a common constitutional framework, and the matter kept pending till almost 1973. There were two interim constitutions earlier, but including the Constitution of 1962. But those constitutional arrangements did not prove to be durable. So Strictly speaking, Pakistan was able to adopt a stable, permanent constitutional arrangement which was acceptable to most of its provinces in 1973 during the government of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. So, in that sense, you could say that Pakistani Federation, as a stable federation, is relatively younger than, say, India or some of the other federations such as the US, which are much older. And if you put those two things together, the relative poverty level and deprivation in Balochistan, its small population size, its sparse and very large geography, its long and porous borders with neighboring countries, as well as the Persian Gulf through the Indian Ocean and Arabian Sea in the south, you can well understand why is it that Balochistan has had a tense and somewhat complex relationship with the Pakistani Federation compared to some of the other provinces in Pakistan.
I think that was really very succinct and also very crucial overview of Balochistan and its relationship in Pakistan with Pakistan. And now, more on so, as you've mentioned before, its strategic role. If we discuss more about the projects happening within Balochistan and the role that it plays, CPEC is the central of debates surrounding Pakistan's economic growth and trajectory. In this context, what position does Balochistan hold in the CPREC project? So, what do you think Balochistan fits in this picture?
Balochistan plays an important role, in the architecture of CPEC, because the crucial link, one of the crucial links of CPEC, that is the Gwadar port, is located in Balochistan, in the southwest of the province, near the border with Iran. So it is in a way the terminus of the CPEC, southern terminus of the CPEC corridor. More importantly, all the CPEC, as you know, is one of the links in the larger Belt and Road Initiative, the BRI, and it's a flagship component of the BRI, and an important sort of extension and pillar of the long and friendly relationship, the deep and friendly relationship between Pakistan and China. All now in CPEC, for the benefit of your readers, in CPEC, there are three important connectivity passages. There is, which we call them corridors. So we have the Eastern Corridor that runs through central Punjab and starts. All of the corridors start from the north in Gilgit Baltistan and at Gwadar, but in between they diverge. So the Eastern Corridors travels through Punjab and Sindh and then sort of terminates at Gwadar. The central corridor, again travels through KP, the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, Punjab, and Balochistan, and then we have the Western Corridor, CPEC's Western Corridor, which exclusively, travels through KP and Balochistan. So all of these three corridors, which are the sort of the mainstay or pillars of CPEC, and at Gwadar and in Balochistan. So, due to these reasons, Balochistan and especially the Gwadar port have an outsized role in the overall architecture of CPEC. Beyond this, I also want to broaden this because, as an anthropologist of infrastructure, I would say that some of these initiatives, these corridors, these efforts to what David Harvey has called, compression of space-time or space-time compression, are not new. In the 1960s, for instance, we had the RCD, the Regional Cooperation Development Organization, and a road link was established which connected Pakistan, Iran, and Turkey. So this was the Cold War era, and these three countries were allies, and they wanted to develop their trade. But that corridor also, although it provided connectivity for the people, but it wasn't, it didn't really take off in the same way as was imagined. So and before that, during colonial rule too, we know that the British Empire, during the 19th century, sought to connect India, through a maze, or through a sort of network of roads, railroad lines, and telegraph lines, thinking that, it can connect and hold India together through those sort of arrangements. But this outsize, or this overemphasis by empires and nation states on the power of infrastructure to hold people together, um, if you look at it in a historic context, it appears to be a misplaced faith. It appears to be a misplaced emphasis. Because what ends up happening is that the very people it is supposed to hold together and join together through those corridors, they tend to sort of their ways of life, their senses of belonging and identity, they tend to be disturbed, by these projects, these large scale infrastructure projects. And in the end, what ends up happening is that these large scale infrastructure projects, if they are not managed properly, if people are not taken on board or and into confidence over the future of their own lives and their communities, they end up becoming conduits or vehicles, for dissent, for resistance, and for subverting the very same projects or goals that were supposed to be achieved by undertaking these projects. So we must historicize, the making of infrastructure and the kind of role it plays. And I want to give, very common sense example. You must be familiar, those of you who, who come from or have visited India and Bangladesh and other countries as well, that one of the most common things our people do when they are unhappy with the government is they block the roads. It's as simple as that. So what ends up happening is that the very piece of infrastructure that was supposed to ensure connectivity at the national level now suddenly becomes an obstacle. So what I want to say is that we must not lose sight of the fact that any kind of development, the colonial era infrastructures, the projects undertaken by the nation state, or in this the projects that are being undertaken in our contemporary moment of globalization, right, have to respect the wishes of local people, have to take them into confidence, and we must bring them on board if they are to achieve the objectives that their architects wish to achieve.
Thank you so much. That was a very insightful discussion on the Gwadar port, but more specifically about the people involved in it and the project that the state has undertaken and how it is perceived by people. And I think there are two factors that I want to combine into the next question, which is you've covered that there are differences in perceptions of projects that are being undertaken. So, maybe more specifically, are there any differences in the locals' visions of development vis-a-vis the Pakistan's state for the region, for Balochistan? And how can that gap be bridged? And another question is also, I think, in this discussion of economic development and undertaking of projects, another very key factor that has dominated forums and debates now is COVID-19. So maybe how do you see the impact of COVID-19 also playing out in Balochistan?
Thank you very much. I think so. As I said, these projects, the way they unfold, is a lot. Many times it is different from the way the architects, at the policy level may have envisaged them. So there's a very beautiful metaphor which anthropologist Anna Zink has used for such projects, and it is the metaphor of friction. So she says that even the best machinery, such as an aeroplane or a car or anything, when it is made, designed or made, it may look good on paper, but you really don't know how it will behave until the rubber hits the road. You know, and when the rubber hits the road, the local factors of various kinds, they would play their role in how these projects are conceived. And this fact is also known to the policymakers. So we must not see projects as sort of static entities as they might appear on their planning documents. So in terms of their life cycle, also the planners also learn. And something similar has happened in the case of CPAC, and in particular the Gwadar port project. So when it was initially conceived, there was a lot of optimism, and and much of it was one-sided. Especially from the policy community, and the policymakers and political leadership. There was, and also let's not forget even the people of Gwadar. There was this sort of, for the lack of a better word, naivete on that. Certainly, by putting some infrastructure projects in place, Gwadar would become, sort of the a large port city, comparable to similar port cities like Singapore, where you're sitting, or the port city of Dubai, and other such port cities. And in fact, one of the earliest, sort of the pioneering contracts for the building and maintenance of running of operation of Gwadar port was awarded to a subsidiary of Port Authority of Singapore. PSA Gwadar. So that was sort of the what we call the the optimism phase. But over time, what happened was that local people, they voiced their grievances. What ended up happening was a classic case of what you call policy blindness, which was that while the infrastructure of the port itself and its allied facilities, such as the Makran Coastal Highway, an expressway which connects the Makran Coastal Highway with the port directly, and similar other projects were undertaken on a rapid pace. The basic bread and butter, requirements of the local populations were not met in the with the same speed. Let's say, the basic requirements of the local people, which included things like clean drinking water, regular electricity, and a proper drainage and sewerage system, an efficient drainage and sewerage system, those, and a, what, for the lack of a better word, a reasonable guarantee of job security and livelihood for them. you know so successive governments promised those, amenities, those facilities, and also they delivered them somewhat, but those were not given the priority in the same way as the large scale infrastructure projects were given. And as a result, a gap was created, due to which there were different kinds of political mobilizations, at the local level. Some of those were peaceful, and others took the form of armed resistance against the state. And now, over time, what happened was that the state authorities realized that they have perhaps gone astray, or in terms of they have lost, the direction in terms of the prioritizing different aspects of this endeavor. And in the past 5 to 10 years, more concerted efforts have been made to rectify those. For instance, in the case of Gwadar, the original master plan that was designed by NESPAC, a local engineering and planning services firm, envisaged shifting the local population, part of the local population which was living in the immediate vicinity of the port area to a location out on the periphery of the city. Now, this was not acceptable to the local people. And obviously, there was a lot of anxiety among them around this issue. Another thing was that another planning error was that because it was the planning document envisaged that the old town has to be moved away from its current location, the area of Old Town Gwadar, which is near the port. Um, no investment was made, or very little investment was made in civic amenities. Rather, all the internal roads, civic amenities, etc., were built around the new town, where they were supposed to be moved. This arrangement obviously didn't, work out, and local people were not happy with that. So, in the last 5 to 10 years, the government has tried to make amends for that, and according to the new master plan, which is called Gwadar Smart Port City Master Plan, and which was approved recently in 2019. The old town will not be disturbed, and instead, the planning document, the master plan, the new master plan, envisages the old town as an area to showcase local culture and traditions. The government has started an ambitious 3.5 billion rupees project for the rehabilitation of Old Town Gwadar by providing civic amenities there, paving of streets, electricity, and other drainage and sewerage facilities. And a component of the rehabilitation of Old Town includes the conservation of the heritage of Gwadar. And approximately 200 million have been set aside for that. So, in a sense, the policymakers have realized the error in terms of the planning process and have tried to rectify, those states by investing, in the basic needs of local people. But we have to see whether how long that would go to allay the concerns of local people.
Thank you so much. I think it was really interesting to kind of go back to a policy making level and review what has happened and what has been done and what is continued to be done regarding the Gwadar port and perceptions from the locals, what they're trying to improve. I think to sort of round off the podcast, my question would be in terms of this policy making, what would you say could be a few key lessons that would encourage the sustainability of a long term improvement and also at the same time take into consideration local perceptions or concerns about the projects that they will be doing. Like you said, the projects cannot be viewed in a very static sort of way, but more so on a longer scale and continued happening. So, how would you encourage that kind of policy making? I guess would be my question. Yes.
I think we have to keep in mind, both, the history of people and places, and especially I'm speaking in the South Asian context because our context is different from, say the context of European countries or even the East Asian countries. What has happened is, and you would, some of you and some of the audience would be able to relate it to it from the Indian context as well. So what has been happening is that there is a perception in both in many countries in South Asia, including Pakistan and India, that they have been sort of behind the eight ball in terms of development or industrialization, and in doing so, they try to replicate the more successive models, be it in Dubai or Singapore or in European countries or North America. And they tend to do this without sort of taking into account the particular local context, and local context even within these countries differ. So local context of Lahore is different from the local context of, say, Quetta or Peshawar. The local context of Delhi is maybe different from the local context of Chennai or, say, Assam. The local context of, say, Colombo would be different from the local context of the Tamil majority districts. So what ends up happening is that policymakers tend to forget these important differences, and they tend to adopt a what you call one size fits all. And also in terms of learning from the past, because as I mentioned, if you look at how these experiments of similar kind were undertaken in the past, right? These obviously they were mistakes that were made, and local people were ignored on many occasions. But every new planner or architect or policy leader tends to think that this work differently this time, without sort of correcting some of those mistakes. So the I think the bottom line is that we have to place less faith in infrastructure. Infrastructure is important, no doubt about it. We have to upgrade infrastructure and provide what we think are world class facilities and communication to our people. But at the same time, we have to make sure that the kind of development projects that we undertake are pro people, that local people are taken on board, and that the projects and policies that we implement, that the government implements, respect the local culture and traditions of the people who are supposed to be the recipients of development or beneficiaries of those development projects. And these things have to be done through substantive policy mechanisms. Merely declaring these things, that we have taken people on board, or merely sort of engaging in political rhetoric, is not sufficient. Those people have to be given voice at the various platforms, be it at the local government level, at the city government or district government level, be that at the provincial or at the federal level, because it is only through the substantive input of the local people and their elected leadership that the planners can correct their course and avoid the kind of mistakes that lead to resentment among the people.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jamali, for the very insightful discussion. It was very interesting and I definitely learned a lot. Thank you so much for joining us today. You were listening to South Asia Chat. In the first week of August, ISES will be holding its annual conference virtually. You can get updates on our website, ises.nus.edu.sg, or from social media. We are on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Thank you.